Doug, the economy has had a lot of competition for headlines recently, but it's very much on the minds of most Americans. And last week, we got a couple of reports that I want to talk about. One was the October report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis on the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. That's a mouthful, but it's important because it's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. And in October, the PCE price index showed a pretty positive trend, and it was kind of flat. Actually, it showed inflation coming down. So tell us about it, and why it's what is the most significant salient parts? Because a lot of people are saying, "Hey, look, this looks like maybe the Fed has engineered a soft landing." What's your take?
So first, for the listeners, do not try to remember any of these terms: PCE price index, PCE price index, market-based core PCE price index. Usually you hear about the consumer price index. That's people's measures of inflation. That's the cost of a fixed basket of goods. You go out every month and you buy the same stuff, and you see how much the cost of buying it goes up. But that's not how people behave. When people go to buy eggs and eggs are suddenly 98 bucks a dozen, they buy fewer eggs. They do something else. And the reason the Fed likes this PCE price index is it reflects actual purchases in the economy. And so as people move away from high price stuff toward lower price stuff, you generally get less inflation out of the PCE price index. And we do. Like CPI inflation peaked at 9.1% year over year. PCE, the one we're going to talk about, peaked at 7.1. So if you're in the Fed world, you're looking at this index, it gets up to 7.1%. Your hair is on fire. You want to get it back to 2%. That's the goal. And what we found out in the most recent report is measured year over year, PCE inflation is now 3%. Now, that's seemingly an enormous amount of progress, 7.1 down to 3. If you dig inside of it a little bit, you get a slightly more nuanced view. People like to look at, quote, core inflation, which gets rid of food and energy prices, not because it's a better measure of inflation. In fact, you have to pay for food and you have to pay for energy, so having those prices matters. But it's a better predictor of where the overall index is going to end up 2, 3, 4 years from now. So if you look at the core, it came in at 3.5%, down from 3.7 the month before, and the core peaked at 5.6. So that kind of progress, 5.6 down to 3.5, isn't quite as dramatic as looking at all these top lines, because the top lines are heavily influenced by energy prices. Energy prices last month fell at an annualized rate of 27%. That's not going to continue, and that's why the top line got pulled down so much. Staring at the core gives you a much better feel for the underlying trends in inflation. So Fed's made a lot of progress. It's still at 3.5, needs to get down to 2. That's a lot more sledding. And if you read scintillating documents like the minutes of a Federal Open Market Committee meeting, you'll see that the staff's forecast, which they present to the folks making these decisions, is that we'll get back to the 2% target in 2026. So while you and I think about inflation as a problem we got to solve and solve now, like January would be great, so let's get it done by next summer at the latest, the Fed is on a multi-year trajectory. When you hear them talk about, we're going to retain the option to maybe raise rates more, we're not in a hurry to cut rates, you're hearing that viewpoint, that inflation is here, it's hard to get out of the economy, and this is going to be a long and modest decline, not some sort of sharp revision to go down to 2 and we're done.